Hi, welcome to The Spot on Health. My name is Shirley Gutkowski, and I would like to let you know that you can share these shows by going to sunprairiemediacenter.com. I have been a Sun Prairie resident since about 1983, and you may know some of my family members. My husband Mark and I have had a number of children go through all kinds of things here in Sun Prairie since 1983. And we have my son Philip here as the director and the producer of this show, The Spot on Health. I am a practicing dental hygienist and a speaker and a writer. And I've done it internationally, if you can remember, if you can imagine that. I've spoken in Canada, but that's not the only international place that I have spoken in. I've been in Australia and Germany and South Africa. So I've done quite a number of things in my career as a dental hygienist. My career had to take a little bit of a turn because it was getting a little frustrating for me, knowing all the things that I know and being able to share all those things with my colleagues. So I've written books and I've written articles. I've written a couple of books actually for dental hygienists, and you can see one back there. The Purple Guide is a series of books for dental hygienists to help them move through their career, starting with a new graduate in dental hygiene all the way through a 25-year veteran. So that's what I've been doing for the last little while, since about 2003. And I have written a number of textbook chapters for dental hygienists and for dentists throughout the years. And I've been very excited to do that because I'd like to improve the health of patients by educating the practitioners with some advanced techniques. I've even gone down to Belize. I forgot to list Belize. How did I forget Belize? And we were teaching minimally invasive dental techniques to the dentists down there and providing care to the people who live in Belize as a service, a mission service. So that was really exciting too. But we did a lot of teeth down there, and we really brought a different level of care. If you've known any other dental mission trips, they usually come back with a lot of extracted teeth. Sorry, Phil. Phil's over there wincing. Oh, she's going to talk about extracted teeth. But that's what happens on most of the missions because they don't have real good dental care. But in our Belize trip, we were doing a completely different thing. We saw hundreds of people, thousands of teeth, and we took under 10 on one trip. So that was really amazing. Some of the articles that I've written too are for nurses and for physicians. It turns out that the mouth is attached to the body, and it's kind of unknown in certain circles, or they understand it, but they don't really get a good grip and a good understanding about that. And that kind of brings us to this television show, The Spot on Health, and that is to help people understand how all these things interact with one another, because that's really critical. And it really kind of illustrates three of my passions. I'm going to go through them, 1, 2, 3. And I'm not going to do it too fast because I want to make sure that everybody understands what it is that I'm doing. My first professional passion is prevention of disease. That's really high on my list. As a dental hygienist, we are trained pretty dramatically on disease prevention. And then we get out into the real world and we get trapped in the day-to-day kind of opportunities that we have presented to us with our patients. The second biggest thing kind of goes into that, and that is the care for residents in long-term care situations. Not the overall care, but the oral care. We know that poor oral care in long-term care residents leads to pneumonia, leads to poor glucose control in diabetics, leads to poor nutrition. We in dentistry have spent a lot of time, and our patients spend a lot of money keeping their teeth, right? So they have their teeth, they want to keep their teeth. They've gone to the dentist. They've spent thousands of dollars to keep their teeth, only to end up in a nursing home and losing 60% of their teeth in 3 years. And the average length of time in a long-term care facility is 3 years. So they spend the whole time there with this horrible situation where their teeth aren't being cleaned properly. It's not because nurses or nursing assistants don't want to or don't know how to. They are inundated with day-to-day activities, and the mouth is kind of hidden, and they don't often think about it. Or they'll drive home at the end of the day and think, oh no, I didn't brush so-and-so's teeth today, or they wouldn't let me, or something like that. So it's real important to me to improve the oral care in long-term care. And we'll have a guest or two talking about that as well. And my third main professional passion is making the working lives of dental hygienists better, which is why I wrote those books. The first book that I wrote was for newly graduated dental hygienists. And the reason I did that is because we come out of school learning how to clean people's teeth in 3 hours. Can you imagine? Can you imagine taking 3 or more hours to get your teeth cleaned? Well, that's what we come out of school knowing how to do. Just 3 hours, and we have to do it in 45 minutes or an hour. So there's all of those kinds of questions, how to get it all done, namely, that newly graduated dental hygienists have. So I got together with a friend of mine, Amy Neves, and we wrote a book for dental hygienists who are fresh out of school. And then it started to become apparent that dental hygienists were running out of places to work. There seemed to be a lot of dental hygienists, dentists were retiring, and there was no place for a 25-year practicing dental hygienist to work, mostly because she couldn't translate that onto her resume. And so I got together with another dental hygienist friend of mine, and we wrote a book called Paper Persona. And we addressed all the different aspects of clinical dental hygiene and how to translate that into their resume. Because their resume looked like they just got out of school last week, and they knew a lot more than what they were translating onto their resume. So that's what I've been doing for the majority of my career. A couple of years ago, though, I became aware of a new way of preventing disease, and that was focusing on the airway. The airway is almost the last missing link between oral and systemic health. And so based on all of that information, I created my own practice. So that's what I have now here in Sun Prairie. It is on the hub of my national agenda to improve health across the board using things that we learn as clinicians of the mouth, as helpful people that try to prevent disease starting in the mouth or maybe ending in the mouth, either way. My practice is called Primal Air. You may have seen it listed in the Sun Prairie newspaper recently, and it's almost across the street from K-Sun Studios here. We could pretty much walk right over here. So it's at 1266 West Main. And as I mentioned earlier, my son Philip Gutkowski is the practice manager, and he is also the producer of this show, The Spot on Health. So if you have a topic, or you have a concern, or you want to be a guest on the show, give him a call. He's interested to get us a lot of really interesting aspects to dental health and systemic health and how all of those pieces go together. So that's kind of the broad picture of how I got here. And the shorter, kind of more focused way that I got here was in 1999, I got my undergraduate degree in dental hygiene from Marquette University. And I wanted my career path to change, but it didn't change all that much. And by 2003 then, I had a reputation for writing for the most widely read dental hygienist publication called RDH Magazine. I had a monthly column in that magazine for about 3 years. Then I had a column in another publication called Contemporary Oral Hygiene for another 3 years. And I focused in on advanced procedures that would address dental decay and periodontal disease, particularly in a completely different way than what we had been looking at it for. And I really wanted to talk to patients like you, people that are tuning into a show called Your Spot on Health, and help them understand better how to get to healthy teeth. And so I wrote the books, I wrote the book chapters, and I got some attention from some international companies, and they helped support my speaking across the globe, as I mentioned. I wanted to work with consumers, though. I really wanted to communicate. And what happened in the meantime is that I got trapped in this techno speak that Philip is trying to get me out of all the time. Smaller words, Mom, smaller words. So that's what he's here to do, to keep me on track here. So that's what I did for the last 15 years, was honing these ideas and being aware of different ways of reducing cavities and periodontal disease using things like xylitol. Behind me here you see that I have a couple of xylitol products. One is a mouth spray and one is a nasal spray, and we didn't even bring the gum and the mints and everything. And the studies that show how xylitol works against dental diseases is unbelievable. And so far, these are the only products that have xylitol in them for those specific attributes like nasal rinsing. And so that's what I was teaching to the dental professionals, that we don't only have fluoride. So that's kind of how I went about my speaking career and my writing career, was to bring things to the dental community so that consumers could contact the dental community and say, I'm interested in xylitol, what do you know? And they're going to say, yes, we use xylitol here all the time. So when I started 15 years ago, you couldn't do that. It would take you a lot of phone calls to find a practice like that. Today, though, I think it'd be a lot easier to find a practice that could get you into that understanding. So in 2011, though, I decided that I'd had enough with dental and I was going to speak to consumers. I wanted to speak with consumer groups like diabetes groups, diabetes educators. I wanted to speak with medical practitioners so that they could see too that the mouth was attached to the body. And I was working really hard to get involved in those groups, and I just ended up with a lot of hurdles. It seems like physicians don't want to talk to dental hygienists, and that seemed to be a pretty big problem for me. So I thought, well, okay, I will start a podcast. So that's what I did in 2013. And I interviewed heavy hitters. I interviewed people that were researching some of these new ways of practicing, new products, new ideas, like this idea that the airway is really contributing a lot to problems systemic-wide, and that maybe it wasn't just the bacteria that was in the mouth that was traveling hither and yon that was causing the problem, and maybe it was more about what was happening with our airway. So we need to connect the mouth and the airway with the rest of the body. And that's what happened to me in 2014. I went to my first meeting about the airway. It used to be called sleep dentistry, but now it's kind of changing to be airway dentistry. And that was a huge new way of looking at oral and systemic health. Dentists that I met at that meeting were selling their practice. They were selling their normal type of dental practice, and they were opening airway practices that would help patients open their airway. This is where I found out that the maxilla is shrinking. I'm not allowed to say maxilla, am I, Phil? So the maxilla is code for the palate. So the palate is the top, the roof of the mouth, right? But it's also the floor of the sinuses. And early research, even in the 1913 time frame, was really captivating some researchers to wonder why the mouth was so crowded and why people were getting cavities even 100 years ago. And what they were finding was that the diet and the lack of chewing, even back then, was causing the maxilla not to grow. So if you don't have a maxilla that's growing, you're not going to have room for all your teeth. So it wasn't that some people had big teeth or too many teeth. It was more about this maxilla not expanding or not growing to its fullest potential. That dropped me. I was flabbergasted. You can ask anybody. I know what I was like right after that meeting. I was like, we're all suffocating. This airway problem affects ADHD, ADD. It affects gastric reflux. It affects cognition. It's been linked to Alzheimer's. And then just recently, I want to say Dr. Scalia, but that's not it. Justice Scalia was recently passed away, and there was one article that talked about his CPAP machine right next to his bed, okay, unplugged. Nobody likes to wear that CPAP. And so the dentists who were opening these airway practices were looking for myofunctional therapists. And so I went for my orofacial myofunctional therapy training. Philip doesn't like me calling it that, but that's what it's called, orofacial myofunctional therapy. Oro is mouth, facial is face, right? Myo is muscle, and functional is function. So orofacial myofunctional therapists practice manipulating or training or retraining the facial muscles, including the tongue, to work more appropriately. So can the tongue expand the arch? That's the big question. It cannot if you're a fully grown adult. That's not going to help. So my job is to make sure that the tongue gets up to the palate, up to the roof of the mouth, into the maxilla, in a child, to help that pressure from the tongue move the maxilla out to its widest dimension possible. So that's what orofacial myofunctional therapists do in short. We also, in an effort to do that, help people get rid of things like their thumb sucking habit. Yes, I saw a patient that was, or a client in her 20s that was still sucking her thumb. So that's, that's one of the things we do. Digit biting, nail biting, that kind of thing. Those are the things that we do to help facilitate a better airway. It sounds really nebulous, and that's why I wanted to have this show called A Spot on Health. As we bring different practitioners together to talk about their expertise in health, I'm going to accidentally say, look at that, that's what happens in the mouth, or if their airway was better, or things along those lines, because it does matter that you have an airway that matters. It does matter that you have teeth that work. It does matter that you even keep teeth. I also learned that sleep apnea was just one kind of an airway issue. Sleep apnea classically is where you stop breathing in the night and that you are forced to kind of wake yourself up in order to get air. But there's also kind of an airway resistance. I remember a patient that I had right after I had that first exposure in 2014 down in Chicago. She was in her 40s, a lot of cavities, a lot of fillings, a lot of fluoride treatments. She had a long health history with yeses all over the place, just kind of like shotgun. You would never think that all of those things would come together into one condition. And I noticed for her that her tongue was tied. It was almost not able to stick out, but she could talk and she could eat. And nobody ever thought anything more of it, that she could use her tongue that way, or she couldn't use her tongue in a way that was really appropriate. So that kind of thing is what motivated me to start my own practice, that I could see these patients and help them. No, I'm not going to cut their tongue loose. That's all referral stuff. That's back and forth. I don't do any surgery. I got nothing to do shots. I don't have any scraping instruments at all in my practice. Actually, a company just sent me one the other day, and I thought, I am not going to bring that to the office. It's going to stay here in the kitchen. I'll stick it in a drawer somewhere. So that's how I separate orofacial myofunctional therapy from my practice and my dental hygienist practice, being a dental hygienist. I also learned that airways contributed, or blocked airways, or resistant airways that are just too small, which was her case. I guess I kind of lost that thread. So her case was that her airway was very, very small. Your airway should be about an inch, which, there we go. Should be about an inch around, and hers, if we took an x-ray, was probably about that big around. But she wasn't your classic sleep apnea patient. She wasn't, 300 pounds with a big old neck and all these other problems. I really, truly know now that her conditions were contributed to, or even started by, her inability to get good oxygenation. And that's also how it works with some of the other cognitive kind of problems like Alzheimer's and classic ADHD and ADD. So I want to be able to help people survive. Diabetes is also affected. People with sleep apnea have a harder time with their glucose management. So they have to always be fiddling around with their medications. Same with periodontal disease. People with periodontal disease can save people with diabetes who have periodontal disease treated can save over $2,000 a year. Can you imagine? In downline medical costs. So this all, you can see how I keep bringing everything back around. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, I can bring any conversation back to dental. And he goes, okay, how about weightlifting? I think everybody was amazed that I turned that into a discussion about temporomandibular joint, TMJ. But I did. I can't help it. So I asked my son Philip if he would like to help me run the practice, get back down to things here as I speak and write, and I'd like to see clients also. So we've got this little match made in heaven right here in Sun Prairie at our Primal Air office. He said yes. So that's the story of how I got here. That's the long story, the short story, and kind of a story in between. And I know it may sound a little bit jumbled up, but it's really a massive kind of a thing. And how we put dental health together with systemic health is really important. And it could save billions of dollars. I spoke at the Medical Directors Association, I think it was 2.5 years ago or 3 in Washington, D.C. I had a poster there, and I showed how just in pneumonia alone, we could reduce costs in long-term care by almost $1 billion. And by also affecting the blood glucose problem, we could save another $1 billion in long-term care, which would be enough savings to hire dental hygienists to work in these long-term care facilities and to still have money left over. So there's money to be saved by having dental hygienists around. And when I was talking to Jeff here at K-Sun, I said, who better to run a health show than a dental hygienist? Who better? And he was like, I guess nobody. He really just didn't know what to say. So twice a month, we'll have a new show here highlighting another healthcare provider in and around Sun Prairie. We'll be gathering in some people virtually through video chatting with some of the friends that I've made around the country who have specialties in their areas, so that we get a bigger picture and a big flavor, and highlight some of the practices that are right here in Sun Prairie that can help you get to your healthiest by preventing problems and treating problems at a very early age, because we can find them at a very early age. We'll be learning how good oral health and airway combine with chiropractic care, physical therapy, dentistry, foods and nutrition, dental hygiene, Eastern medicine practice. We're going to get, osteopaths, naturopaths, aromatherapy. I've got an aromatherapist on the line. Woohoo! Anyone else that has scientifically proven benefits to your health, to lead you down the path to health, to get your spot in your healthy world. So we're about ready to wrap it up here, and I guess that's pretty much all I had to say. I hope that you continue to join us here at KSUN on your cable station. You can find us on the internet at whatever I said it was on the website, and you can call us at the office to talk to Philip if you'd like to recommend a show that we do on health, and our office number is 318-2800. And I encourage you to join us here and at the office for a spot on health for yourself. Thank you.